Hello, everyone. This is JB here, and I am here to have a review and discussion of The Dragon Prince, Season 2, Episode 1, A Secret and a Spark. So I'm new to this kind of thing, and, I've enjoyed The Dragon Prince thus far. I seen Season 1 a couple months ago. And that really got me into it, and I was excited when season 2 came out. And I, pretty much binged that in 2 or 3 days. And I'm the type of person who, loves to go to YouTube and see what other people are thinking about what I'm watching. And as I was going throughout YouTube, I realized that there wasn't a lot of videos, discussing the events of season 2. And so, like they say, if you want something to exist, you should do it yourself and contribute in that way. So that's what we're going to be doing with each episode. I will be going through each episode, doing a short recap, and then a little discussion afterward, just so that we can keep the conversation going and have a fun discussion about this. Now, this is something that I am new to. This is my kind of first chance at doing something like this. So I want to be clear that, although I'll be talking about each episode in great detail, this is not a critique. I'm not looking to, objectively critique the show. I'm going to leave that more toward the people who've been doing it for a while. I'm just here to get a good discussion going and just having fun with what we are talking about. So this video will be focusing on season 2, episode 1 of The Dragon Prince, A Secret and a Spark. This is spoiler warnings, so you have been warned. Okay, so we start the episode with Amaya, and it's interesting because it doesn't go through the normal title sequence, but instead, it shows the Dragon Prince, and then it goes right to Amaya, and she seems to be in this set of lava fiery border by herself, and she runs into Sunfire Elves. And they duke it out for a little bit, but then she retreats because she realized that she was kind of outnumbered and outmatched, because one of the Sunfire Elves had sort of that sunblade that cut through metal or anything. And so I quickly realized, let me go get reinforcements. Something is not right. And then we go to Viren, and he is meeting with the council, and he's basically saying the elves are attacking, they're approaching our border, we need to get our life together, and we need to fight for our humanity. And the council is just like, nah. I think they're still holding hope that the princes are still alive, and they want to make sure that they can bring the princes back to Katalis safely, and then proceed with how they should defend. Obviously, this Viren doesn't like this, and he's going to be more up to his shady ways. Then we meet back with our main group of Rayla, Callum, and Bates, the Dragons, and Ezrin. And, they're kind of eating at the table. Matter of fact, eating kind of like worms, but the Moon Lady is giving an illusion of great food and delicious food. And we have Rayla, who's celebrating that she has both of her hands back, and they're kind of, all kind of catching catching their bearings, trying to plan for what they're going to do next. And Rayla's kind of skeptical. She gets the sense that there are people after them. And so she says, okay, we need to get going. And they're like, but why can't we stay a little bit longer? And so then they do decide to stay. And each character kind of is doing their own thing. So we have Ezrin. His main purpose in this episode is trying to teach Zem how to fly. The Dragon Prince. Teaching him how to fly. Callum is wanting to learn magic from the Moon Lady, and I forget her official title. So for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to call her Moon Lady. And then Rayla is there to patrol the surrounding area to make sure that no one gets hurt. So that's sort of what is going on with the group, and Bait is just chilling, with his, his kind of sour self, giving everyone the side eye. And then we go back to Viren, and he goes into the king's quarters and he steals his seal, the king's seal, and he later writes letters to the other kingdoms in the Pentarchy, and he sends them off with the king's seal. And there's a scene where he's with the Hawkmaster, and the Hawkmaster is like, I don't know about this because you're not really the king, and Viren with his shady self is like, I will kill you if you don't do this. So do that. And so Viren's next step, is he went behind the council's back. So now he is going to write to the Pentarchy to try to get them on his side. Meanwhile, we go back to Callum, and he learns about magic, and he learns about the Moon Nexus and how, that's sort of the center power of moon magic. And then we learn about Arcanum. So Arcanum is sort of this thing that is born, or that is within you, that enables you to perform magic. And Callum learns that he is not born with an Arcanum. Humans are not born with the Arcanum in them. And, he's a little saddened by that. And, he was like, well, I've seen humans do magic all the time. What are you talking about? Humans can't do magic, because that's what the Moon Lady said. And, she said, well, humans could only do magic if they have a primal source. So, like, he had the primal stone, but he had destroyed that in order to hatch the egg for Zim, or by doing dark magic. And she speaks, very poorly about dark magic. And so Caleb is a little bit sad there, and he goes back. He's like, okay, well, I thought this was what I was supposed to do, but apparently I can't do it. And then he's like, nah, I'm gonna do this. So he goes back to the Moon Lady, and he's like, I'm gonna learn, magic. And she's like, you can't, because you don't have Arcanum. And it's sort of like this secret, not secret, but this thing inside of you that is like hard to explain. And she's trying to explain to him, and he's like, this is not really making sense. And we kind of leave off there. At the very end of the episode, Rayla is patrolling the surrounding areas, making sure that no one is there. But turns out Claudia and Siren was indeed tracking them, and Claudia ends up using a sort of a flute instrument type thing to put Rayla to sleep. And so she falls asleep, grabs a flower, and she's then now sleeping. That is the episode there. And now what I'm going to do is just give sort of my thoughts and have a quick discussion on what the episode, what I took out of the episode. And so again, this is not me critiquing or saying what was good, what was bad. This is mainly like, I like the show. I like, watching the show. I just want to have a discussion about it. So I have, a couple points for this episode in particular. I have 3 points that I would like to discuss a little bit further. My first point is Viren is still shady. Like, this guy is still shady. He was the antagonist toward the end of last season, and he is still with his shady ways. Now, obviously, one thing I like about this character is he's just not evil just to be evil. He really thinks what he is doing is best for the Kingdom of Katalis, or at least that's how it's presented, that, he really thinks that they need to do this in order to protect their kingdom. But he is definitely, at the very least, chaotic neutral. He is not, he's willing to, do things that maybe isn't the most conventional way, especially with stealing the King Seal. and sending those letters to the rest of the Pentarchy. So he is still shady. He probably is still going to be shady. He probably still is going to be the main antagonist of this season. But there's that. And then the second thing that I wanted to talk about was Caleb's determination. And this is something that was definitely present throughout this episode. He at first he learns, yeah, humans can't do magic, and he's like, nah, I want to try. I want to try more. I want to try to do magic. And so he is trying to do magic. He's trying to understand magic. And I think that this is going to be a theme going throughout the season of him trying to figure this out, even though apparently humans can't. And so I think he's going to try to figure out how exactly this magic works. What is this arcanum that is within creatures, and how can he access that arcanum so that he can be a mage, which is something that he feels that he is good at and something that he can do. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up was the moon philosophy. And this is something that I am really excited about moving forward. And this gives me hope in the show and the direction that they are going. And what I mean by this is, first off, this reminds me of Avatar. This reminds me of the reasons why I love Avatar. And I know it's going to be inevitable. All of us comparing the Dragon Prince to the Avatar, like it's just going to happen no matter how hard we try and say, it's not Avatar, it's not Avatar, we shouldn't compare it to Avatar. We're going to compare it to Avatar because, some of the writers are the same. We even have some of the same voice actors. So we're going to compare. But, one thing I really liked about Avatar is the way that the sort of magical or fantasy system in that world worked made sense. It wasn't just like, we're born with this thing and we can automatically do it. It's like the level of progression you can follow it through a logical way. And an example of this is when Toph learns to metal bend. And, it could have been really easy to be like, okay, well, Toph is a sweet bender, so she just learned how to metal bend. But it's not like that. It's the way she learned how to metal bend, it made sense to who she was. Because she was blind, she was forced to feel the earth through her earth bending, through that seismic sense. And because she was able to feel the earth, she wasn't just looking at what she saw. She was able to know what was. And because of that, when she touched metal, she could tell that, there were little pieces of earth within the metal. So instead of saying, I'm going to bend the metal, she said, I'm going to bend the pieces of the earth inside the metal. And that is how metal bending was created. And that makes sense. You can follow, that logical progression, and it makes sense. Like it's like, yes, I can see how she could arrive at that. Or even, the different nations. It wasn't just like, oh, we're just gonna say the water tribe does this. But it's like the way that each nation lived was influenced by the element that they were harboring. And that makes sense, that it makes sense that the Fire Nation, was able to advance technologically faster because they could, heat and make metal and kind of go through the Industrial Revolution because of their firebending. It makes sense that, earthbenders are, the Earth Nation is stubborn and, they're about, the facts, and because that's how Earth is. It makes sense that, waterbenders are more about converting, offensive, energy to defense and then back to offense, because that's the way water works. And so, like, all of these things make sense, and you're like, yes, I get this. And I say that to say this. The Dragon Prince also follows this type of progression. And one way you can see that manifest is through the moon philosophy. It could have been really easy to say, like, okay, those who can do moon magic, they can just do these sweet things. But it's not, it goes farther than that. It goes farther than moon people or moon, the people who have the moon arcanum within them do these things. But it's because of their understanding of the moon, it's why they can do what they do. And this can be clearly seen by the philosophy that the Moon Lady has. Okay, she says this quote about the moon, and it is so true. It's like, if you look at a half moon, if you just look at the half moon, it looks like only half of it exists. However, because of the illusion, you actually understand more about the thing. And, she says that. It's like, she says people only look at the thing. But, she says, we look at the illusions and we know the thing more. And that's a perfect example of that. It's like, you can just see half the moon and say, oh, that's half the moon. But because you know it's an illusion, because you know the other half is there, you can then make other assumptions like, at that point, the moon is almost behind the earth, which is behind the sun, and all of these things are spherical in nature, and this is why this is happening, because the sun is casting a shadow, and it's like you know all of these things because you understand the illusion. And it's because of that is why they could do their magic, is because they have that understanding of the moon, and that influences their magic. So even the Moon Lady, her whole thing is illusions. She does all of these illusions because she understands how that works. Or even the Moon Shadow Elves. It could have been like, oh, Moon Shadow Elves, they just, they go into their Shadow Elf form and, they're just more sweeter. They can't be seen. But it's not like that. It's because they understand, the moon and its philosophy. They understand how illusions work. They take in that philosophy. Then they are able to create an illusion themselves. And this is something that I really appreciate about the direction of the show and where it's going. It's not just like, all right, we're just going to arbitrarily assign these feats to these people. But it's like, no, they gain these feats because of the philosophical understanding of that specific primal source. And I'm really here for that. I that makes a lot of sense to me. And another thing that I would touch on was my last point is I liked that it was hard for the Moon Lady to explain that. When Callum was like, can you just explain to me how this whole Arcanum thing works? And she's trying to explain to him. It's like, oh, well, it's sort of this thing. We kind of have this philosophy and it helps us do stuff. And, just so you guys know, I've seen the whole season up until this point, and I'm actually going through the second time. And, this is something that comes up more than once, and I won't spoil it, but this is something that comes up more than once, of this idea of like people not being able to explain the Arcanum. It's sort of like this, like, kind of some reviewers have referred to this as like mumble jumble of like just trying to explain how this works but can't quite explain it. And let me tell you, I'm totally here for that. I'm totally here for the fact that they actually have a hard time explaining how this works inside of them. That is more of this kind of innate thing that is there, and they know they make sense of it, but they can't explain it. And like, I feel like there are things in our lives, as our normal lives that are like that, whereas like we know something to be true, but we can't quite find the words to explain what it is. And I'm okay with that. I know some people didn't like that, but here is why I'm okay with that. Because if we try to get exact definitions of how these things work, and we try to explain exactly, what is the thing that is causing us to do this, we get midi-chlorians. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm not one of those who hate on the prequels, but it's like when we try to explain everything, we get midi-chlorians. And none of us like midi-chlorians because midi-chlorians start adding rules, and we're just like, wait, so if he just has a high midi-chlorian, then what about this? And like, it just starts getting plot holey everywhere because we're trying to fit this midi-chlorian system to the Star Wars world. So I'm actually okay that, in this specific example, that the moon lady uh, is having a hard time explaining this sort of philosophical implication that allows her to do what she does. And to me, this is a sign that they like the writers have my trust. I see what they're doing, and I can't wait to dive into the other primal sources and sort of the philosophical implications behind that. So that is sort of my discussion on the Dragon Prince season 2 episode 1, which was a secret and a spark. I will be focusing on episode 2 in the next video. I'll be interested in your thoughts, so if you have any thoughts, so you could leave them in the comments below. Did you agree with the what I said about the moon philosophy? Did you like that as well? Were you satisfied with the moon lady's explanation on of what the Arcanum was? If so, if not, just comment below, and I look forward to having a discussion with you. All right, I will see you on the next video. Bye.